Rayzist virtual trade shows. We're live coming at you today. So, what do we got planned for you? We have halftones, photos. What can you blast them on? We have all different kinds of screens that you can use. So we're going to get into photos. We're going to go deep. But let's talk about what we've done. We're all about education. Okay, so we've been going 9 weeks, different sessions on every Tuesday. So we thank you for joining us. We thank you for your support. A lot of you have emailed me and thanking us and also giving us ideas of what you're looking for. So we really appreciate it. We take that to heart. We're going to get into halftones. Like I said, we're going to bring on April from our custom mask department. She's going to be joining us today. But I have someone special. We have Peter from our art department will also be joining us via Zoom. So we're gonna do something new today. We're gonna get into a Mezzotint screen, kind of look at the dithered patterns. So we're going to call on the expert, Peter from our custom mask department. And if you're not familiar with our custom mask department, that is an area where we run your mask for you. So let's say you don't want to expose, you don't want to wash out, you don't want to produce your stencils, send us the artwork. We have April, we have Peter, they process your orders, we get it shipped out right away. So you can call on the experts when you have problems with maybe some artwork, or you have a big order, or you don't want to deal with the halftones, you can call on our custom mask department. So we're calling on them today. So let's go ahead and let's see what we have. Whenever you're dealing with a halftone, it's a screen. So we've been talking about vector images, we've been talking about text, line art, all that's great, but you want to start to do photos. So what can you put a photo on? So granite, glass. So I have a couple examples here. So this is actually stone. Okay, so this is a great image. I don't know if you can see that great on the camera. This is actually a pattern, and we call this, I believe it's the Jarvis screen. Okay, so this is actually done by one of our dealers in Europe, Matthias, with abrasive imaging, and that looks great. This is another one that he did here on this beautiful lighted base, and just look at how that photo pops. You have two screens here, and you can see this looks like this is the Jarvis screen, but then you have the halftone screen. So that's two images, and it just gives it a different look. And we're going to get into the dithered patterns, the different screens, and that's where a lighted base looks excellent. So you'll see some of these images. Maybe you're at a certain airport. I've seen them where it's glass and it's halftone or a dithered pattern. You're like, what is that? And it's blasted and it's lit up. That's where the light looks amazing on some of these different screen patterns. So we have here is a halftone screen. This is, we call it the rider image. And then you have the text around it with the Yamaha. We have the logo. It looks like the track marks here. This is actually what I did with this one is I added a little rub and buff to brighten up that screen here. And you can see this is what I used. Okay, and if I really don't use a whole lot of rub and buff, but there are times when you need to call for it, and that was on this screen. So you can see the difference here. Black glass, this is our black glass here from our Edge catalog, and this is just blasted, a halftone with some text, but no highlight, no paint, no rub and buff. Here we have our same glass, halftone, and then we have it with a little bit of rub and buff. Now, with these glass plaques, they look great because there's a dark background. And that's one thing that's important when we're dealing with halftones, we're dealing with any type of screen, is light. There needs to be some sort of contrast. So light is a great contrast where it brightens up and shows that etching, but as well as a dark background. So the black glass, the black granite looks great on these halftone images or these screens, and it allows that image, that halftone, to stand out. If we were to do a halftone image on a plain glass with no contrast behind it, it's almost like this image would disappear if there's bright light around it. So if there's like a lot of sunlight coming in, the halftone doesn't really show up well. But if you put something dark behind it, now that image shows. So this is actual glass. And we have here the halftone engraved on the shape of our picture here, Trevor Hoffman. And then we have the black granite behind it. So we do have something else that someone recently did very similar to this, and it was a tribute to Kobe Bryant, a halftone image, and I'm going to call for that photo so you can kind of get an idea of what that looks like. And if you can put that up, you can kind of see the dithered pattern there with that background of the granite. And I'm looking at it on the monitor, so you see that pattern, the text, and then it's a dark background. So go to the next picture so you can kind of see that granite, and you can kind of tell where that dark granite makes that photo pop. And there you go right there. So you have that granite and you have the glass in front, and it just makes, kind of pulls together that whole image. So what we're doing is we're giving you ideas. Ideas that you can take to your clients. These, when you deal with photos, yes, you're going to charge more. There's more work involved, especially when you're going to a water jet and having someone cut the granite. That's where we're going to need to charge. But it's a custom piece. So if you have something that you're doing, something high end, I'm just giving you ideas. It's something that you can do. Call in like a local guy that can do a water jet cut, and then you can start to have your different custom pieces made. So these are just ideas I'm giving you. So we're going to take a look here at my screens real quick. I have John. Hello from Ontario. Good to have you with us. I have Canada. I think it's Daniel. Thank you for joining us. Matthias, Abrasive Imaging, good to see you. I have Jim from New York. Wonderful. Thank you for joining us. Good morning. Let us know where you're from. Give you a shout out. Let us know if you have any questions. So let's come back to this. So with our, if you're looking to get into photos, we have these simple, inexpensive glass plaques. They're in our Edge catalog. Anytime you place an order, ask for an Edge catalog. We can send that to you, and you can have what you have here is a catalog of all your glass that's already etched. So these are items that you can actually show your customers. We don't have our information on here, so you can actually just show this to your customers, and you can have them place an order. And this is what it looks like when it comes, when it ships to you. It's just in a white box, and you have your black plaque here, and then you have your little stand, and then you can also has a stand, and you can hang it up. So that's a little tip there. If you're looking to get in, you need a dark background. These black glass plaques are great little first starters, and they're pretty inexpensive. So let's take a look. We did our urn last week. That's another item that you can do a photo on with some text. So I don't know if you remember, but last week we did this photo, and this was a 30-line screen. You can go to a 40, a 45 halftone line screen. The higher the number, the smaller the dot. Okay, so our project today is, I'm really excited, is going to be blasting a photo with a frame around it on a wine bottle. Now we called on April to kind of set up this artwork. So we're gonna lose the 19 crimes with the wedding photo. All right, no one's awarding here. We're not going to do the ball and chain. We're going to do a celebration of a wedding. And here's my bottle. I did clean it. I removed the back label. I like this bottle because it has a matte finish. And the cream and the halftone is just going to really stand out, and it's going to look good. It's going to pop. And I love the little frame around it. We're just kind of capturing that photo with some text. And let me show you the text that we are going to be doing. So the text is actually going to be about the couple. So again, we're giving you ideas. So we have our wedding couple. We put a frame around it. We put their monogram. So we have Jennifer and Matthew, and Clark is their last name. So we have a J, M, and a C. If you look at the text is blue, which means we're going to do a reverse etch. We're going to blast away the background so that the text is going to shine through. Okay, and we have love always at the bottom. All right, so we have kind of where they met, where they're from, what year they were engaged, and what day they were married. So this is just, again, a gift, a wedding that we can do. So let's go ahead and before I get into converting a halftone image, let's take a look at what a mezzo pattern is, or a dithered pattern. And we have Peter with us. Hi, Peter. We can hear you. Now, it's been about 9 weeks since I've seen Peter, and it looks like he's on vacation. All right, so we have our bride and groom, our couple here, and let's go ahead and take a look. Can you tell us what is a Mezzotint screen?
So a mezzo screen is just a different type of screen, a filter that a third party or Adobe makes. It's just something that you can make to convert a photo into lines, dots, circles, ovals. It's basically converting the pixels into something simplifying it. The example I like giving, like a halftone or any other kind of screen, is kind of like a billboard. If you were to go in real close on a billboard, you would see the smaller dots, the bigger dots that actually make up the image. So that's essentially what a screen is. It's mainly for printing purposes.
Okay.
To convert something digital into a printing purpose.
But we are using it, and you've used it, I know you've used it many times for a photo and changing that photo to that particular screen. Right.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where can you get this this pattern or this screen?
So the one that we like to use, we call it a Mezzo, or that's what it's called in the software. So if you can see my screen, I'll drop it down. It's this company called Andromeda.
Okay.
They have a few different screens, as you can see on the drop-down menu. The one we like to use is called Screens here, and then once this pop-up comes up, if I go under Expert mode, you'll see here. I'll give it a minute for that to load.
So let me ask you this: it's a plugin, and you purchase it separately?
Yes, it's
okay.
a plugin you purchase separately. Now, Adobe Photoshop already has some screens in there, but this one just on its own, we've noticed, has some really nice results. So if the preview comes up, you know what, it might not be showing the preview because I'm just sharing my Photoshop window. So.
Well, can you take
but
that?
Anyways, it's called Mezzo. It'll be in the list there. So now if I just run it, it will create the screen and it'll pop up in just a second. So you'll see the effect it gives.
Okay. So let me ask you this question. Do you have to work with the halftones? You need to make sure that you have your lights and your darks kind of adjusted where you don't want to have an extreme white or an extreme dark. You want to have more of an even tone in that photo. On a Mezzotint screen, is that the same where you have to make sure you have even tone throughout that pattern?
No, that's one of the benefits of using a Mezzotint. You can really you can preserve the contrast of a photo. So you can probably see on the screen I zoomed in.
That looks great.
You can see that the contrast of the image. I have some other samples here that will load up on the screen in a second, just to show the difference of a halftone and a mezzo, let's say on stone. So we'll just give that a second.
Okay. So I see the Pope. Yes, and this one was a halftone.
So that's a halftone. So as you can see, you get an even picture. It's kind of flat in a sense because there needs to be dots everywhere. If you have a dot missing, it'll really stand out. Like I think the person who did this, there was just one little dot that I think got blown off. But in all, it's a pretty good, it's a pretty good etching. It was from an internet photo, not high resolution, and they ended up doing this 8x10, but still made it work.
Right. I remember this coming in. You worked on this photo, and it was a very low-res image, and Peter did spend some time correcting that. And it looks great for the low-quality photo you got. All right.
And now compare that to this headstone with the elk scene, and that is a mezzo. So you can see there's dots missing, but that's what we want. It creates more of a high contrast, more stark kind of look. It bounces more. It attracts the eye more. So mezzos look really well on stone and can come out really well on glass too. It really depends on how it's being displayed.
So is it the same?
It's all about contrast.
The contrast, and if the lighted base looks amazing, or if there's light coming behind the photo or in the top and the ends, that mezzotint will really stand out, that dithered pattern, as well as a halftone But so it's the same as it would be a halftone, where that you have that contrast and it really pops.
Yeah, it will definitely help. Definitely help
Is-
having a dark or something to contrast what you're etching on behind it, or if it's lit up. So.
Okay, now I
both.
see you have something that says engraving photos.
Yes, this is a little kind of report we put together just to show the differences of the different screens options that we give. As you can see, a threshold is really for if you're trying to do something very bold and deep on stone. You lose a lot of detail with that. Next to it, you see the halftone. You get a very flat but even image. Dither is more broken apart. It's more forgiving because you don't have an exact pattern like on a halftone, where if a dot's missing, you won't even realize it. Dithers look really good on large glass lit up. One of our big customers does a lot of these for hospitals, hotels, and they look really great when they're large as dithers and they're lit up and maybe with like a dark background. When you shrink them too much on like a small image, you lose a lot of detail with a dither. So every single one of these screens has pros and cons. And then the Mezzo, again, has a lot of detail and a lot of contrast, which will work, again, as a medium size and some small sizes too. But again, as soon as you start shrinking images too much, you start to kind of just slam all these dots together, and they kind of just become shapes as opposed to, individual dots, as opposed to the halftones where it's always dots. So it's a little bit more of a cleaner image, you could say, a halftone. But the halftones, if you have enough space to work with, you'll get a nice, very stark and contrasting kind of image. And you'll see on this list I put up kind of the pros and cons of each of these different types of screens and methods.
So which screen would you recommend for like a very small image? Would you stick with the halftone then? If it's, let's say, like a 2.5 inch wide or 2 inch high, a small photo, what screen would you prefer when you're dealing with a small image?
Usually with a small image, I would stick with the halftone, maybe a mezzo, depending if it's going on stone. Because mezzos on black stone look really good, almost small or large or medium. They really pop a lot. But halftones and mezzos look great on smaller sizes.
Okay.
That's what I would recommend.
And the dithered for the larger items, the larger glass pieces? Or
yeah, I think so. I think dithers, just from experience, look a lot better, larger.
Okay, so if you were looking, if someone wanted to experiment and with these different plugs in, you can actually just Google Andromeda and look at that. And you're suggesting I think you said screen and etch. I believe I forgot what it said. Etch something.
Yeah, it says Andromeda,
etch tone.
Screen, and then within that is it's considered the Mezzo pattern, is what they call it. And there's a whole window in there. Let me see if I can just kind of pull that up real fast so you guys can.
Actually, we have it, and we can switch over to that in a moment here. But let's go ahead and let's move on to taking that photo, and let's see what it looks like as a mezzo tint.
Okay.
And so we're going to pull up that wedding couple. And when you're dealing with the mezzotint, do you need to turn it into a negative before you print it?
I normally always would do that unless you're going to be paint filling the dark areas black. If you're putting it, let's say, on a white stone, then you would not invert it as a negative.
So the same as a halftone.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, because you're going to be paint filling the black areas. And I am trying to switch over, but I think my computer froze.
Okay, well let me go check our chats real quick, and I'll let you switch over to that. We're going to go check our chats, and then we're going to get started. We're going to do a couple different things, a little different today. Is I'm going to be blasting that bottle before we get into doing the halftone image. Steve Davis, hello. Glad you're joining us. Sari, nice to see you. I have someone, PSA Academy from Hungary in Europe. Welcome. Deborah from Texas. Was it Dripping Springs? Wonderful. Thank you for joining us. Elegant Laser Woodworks. Welcome. Ron and Gail. Great to see you again. Thank you for joining us. And let's see here. Where can I have a question here? Daniel, where can I get the plugin for the Mezzo screen? You can do a Google search for Andromeda, and then once you do that search, you can look for those different screens. It's going to be Etchtone is one of them that he uses, as well as, and then you should find that Mezzotint screen in there. And I did do a search in the past, and I did find it pretty quickly. But again, there are plugins that work with Photoshop. All right, so let's see if he was able to pull that up. We have Sergey and we have Robert. We have Ed Riley, good morning. And we have from, I think it looks Sparrow Bush, New York. Thank you guys. Appreciate you commenting, and always a pleasure to see you guys. So let's go ahead and let me see if he was able to get on. If not, we will move on to blasting our project. Okay, so we have our, I'm back to you, Peter, and we have our wedding couple, and we're going to just do the conversion to a mezzo tint screen.
Right. So first thing I always do is I go to grayscale because we want to be working in grayscale.
Okay.
Next thing I would always recommend is knowing the size you're going to be in. So I'm just going to change this to like a 7.5, 7 by 5.
Okay.
In a typical photo size. And then once we're there, we'll get a better rendering of that screen at the actual size and resolution we're looking at. So now you can see the window that comes up. I can add more or less of this mezzo screen, this coarseness or fineness of it.
Interesting. Okay.
We kind of have a setting already preset of what we do. And then from there, I'll maybe, depending on the photo, that's something to always remember, is each photo is going to be different, how it was shot, whether it was taken with a cell phone camera, whether it's a very old photo or a professionally taken photo. You have to kind of always take that into consideration. So sometimes I will add or remove some of the coarseness or the threshold on it in this left little box over there. But we'll just go with what we see.
And I see that you have 45 and 45. No, that's okay. Keep going. So I noticed that screen size 45 and 45. Okay, so now you just applied the screen.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I can zoom in so you can kind of see a bit of the detail that's in there and how the image is actually built by these dots just put together. Essentially, that is the screen.
That's it. So it's not a whole lot of work because you had you just want to turn it to grayscale and then apply the screen to that photo. But you always want it, just like a halftone, you always want to size it first before you start applying your screens to it. So that's very important to size first, then move on to applying your screen. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we're dealing with a pretty good photo here, professionally taken photo. So there's always little things you can clean up on, bring out some of the highlights, bring out some of the shadows, and that will affect your final mezzo screen. So that just comes with experience. So.
Yes, and practice on a photo that's, let's say, a 3x3. Print that out, practice blasting it, washing it out, and then make your adjustments. And that's how I learned. I had someone just kind of walk me through and print and look at all the areas that I didn't tidy up. And they do show through on the photo, on the mask, as well as the blasting. All right, Peter, well, we thank you for joining us. And I think this looks great. And we're going to go ahead and move on to blasting. And let us know if anyone has any questions for Peter. Just go ahead and email art@rayzist.com. And he is working from the beach is what it looks like. And he can answer your questions. Thank you, Peter. You look good. We'll see you soon. All right, take care. Okay, so let's go to our project because I need the paint to dry. So I have my bottle. It's already been cleaned. And what I mean by clean is I removed my label. I used a little bit of acetone. I used kind of like one of these blue towels, put a little bit of acetone on here, let it sit, and then I just took a razor and cleaned it right up. Okay, so what we're doing here is we have a mask, and I have a halftone as well as a text on here. Okay, and this is a 3mm mask, and I'm doing something a little different. I'm going to use this tool here, and actually let me just go ahead and remove this cover paper, and I'm going to lightly pinch the corner here just so I can kind of get this cover paper or this clear liner slightly removed, just slightly. Okay, so I have someone that sent this to me, Steve from Elite Etching, and this is a great little tool here when it comes to aligning your bottles and putting that mask on straight. Now there are a couple tips that he has where you can actually just set your bottle in here or your cups, and then you can apply your stencil, and then you would mask it right and put it down. I'm going to do that in just a moment, but this is a nice little handy tool, and it's adjustable where you can move this block, and it's a nice holder for your mask, squeegeeing, burnishing. If you're doing multiple mugs, multiple items, this is a great little tool for you, and you can go to Elite Etching, and Steve can help you out with that. So with us here, I have my target, and because I don't know where my center is, because I removed the label, I'm actually going to put my bottle on my target. I'm going to find center here. Okay. And what I'm going to do is turn this around. And so this is going to be my center here. Because when I look at the top part, I want to say that I need to move it, but I can't go by this label. I got to go by the label on the front. So I'm just going to mark my center with a water-based Sharpie. When you're using the Sharpie, make sure you use a fine tip point, because if you don't, you're going to have a big mess. All right, so now that I have my center here, I'm going to place it on this little handy device. I'm going to line up my line here. Okay, and what I like to do when I'm dealing with these images is we have a 1/4" border that goes around. So I'm going to take my border and I'm just going to crease it right down here at the bottom. Just going to find my center here. Okay, and now I'm just going to apply my stencil. And the way that April set this up is my border, the bottom, needs to go all the way down to the bottom. So my crease is lining up to, actually I'm supposed to do it this way, forgive me. There's my line. So my crease is lining up to the line. I'm going to move it down. And we're going to, now you can, this looks like a great tool to use. And I just need to practice with it, but I love it so far. All right, so now I have my item here. You can take a squeegee and squeegee it. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is, now that my mask is aligned, I'm going to use my little pillow here, and I'm just going to put some pressure, because I have a lot of negative area. I need to make sure that all my area is really down on my mask. So hopefully you guys can see this, okay? I have to rotate this bottle. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to start to peel this up. I have a big mask here, and it's a lot of negative area. So when you're dealing with a negative area, I would recommend putting a 1/2 inch around. Let me move over to this side here. Here we go. And I have a matte bottle. Okay, and removing this side here. Okay. My squeegee is my friend today. I'm going to remove this. Okay. All right, so now we have our bottle. We're going to use our thumbs just to kind of press everything down. If you can see a lot of air in my area here. So I'm going to take my wire wheel roller, and we're just going to lightly roll, just like this, just like you would your hand, just lightly roll. No pressure. We're just going to break up that membrane, releasing that trapped air. I would really recommend, I highly recommend using a wire wheel roller when it comes to a negative area. You're just going to perforate that membrane, just kind of pop it. I like to stay away from the halftone area, just kind of. Okay, so now we have our image down. Okay, this looks really good. I'm going to take my saran wrap. If you watched, I think it was segment 4, we did spirit bottles. And we used the saran wrap. The cheaper, the better. The cheaper, the saran wrap, it really starts to stick well. Okay, so we're just going to kind of, and then cut my shrink wrap here. We're going to wrap it around the bottle. The reason why we're doing this is we're protecting our label, and we're protecting the top part of our bottle. So we don't want any sand to get into that. We are sandblasting. Okay, we're going to protect that label. Another tip is you have to have some of that bottle exposed when you're taping. You can't bring the saran wrap up to the mask, then tape. You're going to create a pocket of air, and it's going to want to lift up. So you need to make sure that you have an area that that tape can cling to. So here we go. Make sure your border line is taped up. See, I have that little border right here. I have to make sure this is taped. Otherwise, it's going to show through my blasting. Again, I have another border up here. So we're just going to cover this up. Okay, and I'm going to bring over this other side here. 2 more pieces of tape, and we're going to begin blasting. Okay, and 1 more at the bottom, just to cover that line. Okay, now I'm using 3mm. And if you've heard anything I've said, you're going to say I'm wrong, because I normally use, what's my favorite mil for spirit bottles? It's going to be 5mm. Why? Because I can blast deep at high pressure. I can speed up that blasting process, especially with the big negative area. However, I have a lot of detail here. I have a halftone image. So I need to make sure that I have this mask secure. I'm going to maintain that detail. So we're going to use 3mm, and we are going to blast at 30 pounds of pressure, between 30 and 35. Now again, these are all these little lines, these little dots, these names. I'm just going to kind of use my roller just to really squeegee that mask. Now let's go ahead and I need to get my gloves on. Okay, we got to protect the nails, especially it's hard to get your nails done these days. All right, so I have 2 different types of nozzles that I'm using today. My first nozzle is going to be a 3/32. So this is my 3/32. Okay, when I move to the frame, I'm switching my nozzle to a 1/16. Okay, because I'm going to pinpoint the area that I'm blasting. So let's go ahead and get started. Again, I'm using 150 grit. I have my adjustable cabinet here, my 2034. I'm going to raise it up slightly. I'm at 30 pounds of pressure. Okay, and let's go ahead and step on that pedal. Let's get a good flow here. Easy for me just to step on the pedal with my heels here, and we're just going to break this membrane. And I'm going to focus on the bottom part of my design. I'm going to try to stay away from the halftone as much as I can. It's all about nozzle control here. And do you see my sand blasting? That's my abrasive stream. I got 50% air, 50% sand. You can actually see where my nozzle is targeting. Now, when you're dealing with the negative area, what happens is you can actually create a very uneven blast. So it's very important that you stay consistent with your blasting techniques, your strokes. You want to be very consistent. And then what I would like you to do is when you're dealing with this type of a large pattern is switch it around. Go to a different angle. Again, I'm using 3mm because of the halftone to have one mask. I actually did this in 2 masks originally, but I have to find ways to make it easy for you. Are you really going to want to put 2 masks on a wine bottle and do your blasting? You may. And if that's the case, then you can charge a little bit more to do a deeper blast on the bottom. But we're going to really push our 3mm today. We're going to really target this 3mm. We're going to push it to its limits. I know 3mm is usually used for halftones, for your fine detail, but today we're going to use it for bottle blasting. I'm going to turn this around just a little bit. Why am I doing this? I'm hitting it from different areas because everyone tends to have the same stroke pattern. So if you move the bottle around a little bit, you can make sure that you can have an even blast, that you're not digging a hole in a certain area. If we're blasting the plaques, a photo on a plaque, what we do is I tell people, turn that plaque around. Blast from a different angle, blast upside down, just so we can have a nice even blast. Another reason to have a thicker mill when you're blasting is you can increase that blasting pressure because we want to blast faster to get the job done. But the 3mm is only used for the photo. Again, you want to stay a 90-degree angle as best you can, rotating the bottle. We do need to get a little bit of depth here because I need the text to stand out. It's going to make it easier when we paint and we clean up. One thing to note is my distance of my nozzle. It helps me to have a better stream, a better pattern. I'm reaching a wider area. If I were to move my nozzle in really close, my pattern there is really narrow, and then that creates a great opportunity to show lines in your blasting. All right. We're going to work on the halftone image in just a moment. Okay, one thing I like to do is when we're dealing with the negative area is I like to outline the edges. By outlining the edges, it looks like the whole image is deeper. Hopefully you can see that okay. And I'm blasting at really low pressure at 30 pounds. I'm going to come to the edge here, just kind of make that edge a little deeper. And just outline. Kind of work that border. We want this text to really pop. Tell me what you think about the artwork. If you think this would be something that you would use or you think your clients might like. Kind of showing a little timeline of the couple. Okay, so now I'm going to work on the halftone. The halftone blasts very quickly. You can see that membrane just blasting away. Kind of almost tells you where your nozzle is. I'm just going to kind of do one more little pass. I'm going to go side by side here, just a different direction for my halftone. Okay, so now my halftone is blasted. I'm going to target the frame here. And so I'm going to grab my other nozzle. And let's see if I can work this inside here. I'm going to remove my nozzle. Okay, so I can't remove it here. Let me put it out on my table here. There we go. So I'm going to go to the 1/16, put my little O-ring in there. This is why it's a good idea. You don't want to use a tool to tighten this because you want to be able to change this nozzle as you need to. So now I have a thin nozzle, a narrow stream, and now I'm able to focus on my frame. There we go. I need nozzle control when I'm dealing with kind of staying away from that photo and working on the frame. I need this frame to be a little deeper. I often thought, do we really need a 1/16 nozzle? Because I'm a favorite, my 3/32 is my favorite nozzle. But when I was working on this project, I'm like, okay, this is why you need a smaller nozzle. A narrow spray. What happens if you blast a halftone too long? You start to lose your dots. Okay, so for time's sake, what I'm going to do is I'm going to peel up my outside border here. Just with my nail. Peel that up. Okay. And I'm going to create almost like a two-step etch here. Because when you look at a frame, there's usually like a two-step, or you have some depth, and then you have a border. So we are creating that in our picture frame. Here we go. Okay. I think that looks pretty good. I would, if we had more time, I would actually go a little bit deeper here. And so there's a little bit more depth. So I would do that if I had more time. I'm going to use my air gun here. Okay, so now we're going to get ready to paint this. Okay, so here's our image blasted. And we're going to go ahead and turn on our paint booth here. And the paint I'm using today, it's Nature White. It's the Belton Molotow paints. Been using these for about 10 years now. I love them. It's actually a graffiti paint. So you need to make sure you shake the can well, swirl it around, shake it well, and you can also change your cap. So I have here my gold dot skinny caps. To change a cap, real easy. You just pop this cap off and you put on a new one. brand new cap. The gold dot skinny cap, it reduces the speed of the paint and it reduces the amount of paint coming out. So it gives you better control. All right, so let's go ahead and paint this. You want to do a test spray. We're actually going to paint the whole bottle cream. I'm going to turn this light sprays from different angles. Short sprays. My finger is not on the nozzle. Short sprays. There's a lot of open area that needs to get painted. And I'm going to tape off everything and we're going to paint the frame gold as soon as this paint dries. So let's take a look at it. You can kind of see I'm missing some paint here, but I'm a little heavy here. Okay, so I think this looks pretty good. Maybe right in here. So I'm just going to sweep across. All right. So let's go ahead and use a hair dryer. We're going to speed up this drying process. I'm going to let this dry here. We're going to move on to April. So April is going to show us how she set up this artwork. Now, if a lot of you have been with us for about the past few weeks, and April has been joining us from the Custom Mask department. So let's look here. Let's see, how much time does a normal size picture take? Sergey asked a question. A normal size photo, you're thinking like an 8.5 by 10 to do the blasting. If you're blasting on stone, I'm not sure if that was a question, but if you're blasting on stone, it's going to take you probably about 4 to 5 minutes of blasting a halftone 8 by 10 inches. Hi Nancy, how are you doing? Is there, you have a question. Is there a comparable plugin for Corel products? Andromeda seems to be for Photoshop. So Corel does have some different screens, and one of them is a Jarvis screen that looks very similar to the Mezzotint screen. So I would look at the Jarvis, and I actually, if you shoot me an email later, I'll send you one of the write-ups from from Matthias, and he shows you how to take that photo and convert it to a Jarvis screen, and that's from Matthias out in Europe. So he's one of our dealers, and he's a Corel guy, and he has some good photos in Corel. We have Michael from Baja, Mexico. Fred, how are you doing? From New Jersey. Craig, how are you doing, Craig? And let us know if you have any questions. We'll reach out to you. And let's go ahead and let's bring on April. She's from our Custom Mask department. She's our graphic artist, and she's going to show us how she set up, put the idea to print. All right, April. So you're going to show us how we set up the artwork for this bottle.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So let's go ahead and get you started. If you have any questions for April, make sure that you shoot them over to her. We will get to them as soon as we can. But she's brilliant in Illustrator, and she's a guru, and I love what she does to our artwork, our fonts. She makes everything look really good. So let's go ahead and get started.
Some more.
All right, so I'm going to let this dry here. Illustrator.
Yes, we have Illustrator open, and I have actually your photo that you did just engraved on here.
So if we have time, I'll go ahead and convert the photo, but I think we're running short on time. So we have our halftone screen.
Yes.
And
so what I did basically was add a box tool, get a box tool, and I measured the photo first. I think Jim McLaughlin had a question on what size photo this was. So it is 2 3/4 by a little over 1 3/4.
So let me stop real quick. I'm sorry, I know you're just getting started. I did the photo as a halftone, and I saved it as a BMP. So that photo then was sent over to April to do her magic. So this is where you've taken that photo now, and you brought that BMP file into Illustrator.
Yes.
Okay.
So I brought it into Illustrator, and I created my box patterns according to what you needed to engrave, what your vision was. So this right here is actually something that was taken from some artwork that we did before, and we just used that same piece and we created the artwork. So right here you can see I used this font, and I used 2 different fonts this time. Let me just pull these off of here. And all I did was, you can see how I manipulated them to what I needed it to look like. Now the C
Their
is
monogram, right.
to make a monogram. The C is for their last name, J is for, well, Jennifer, and M is for Matthew. So, and I just kind of added, I just kind of put the name wherever I wanted it to go. Now, Love Always, you'll see down here, again, I played with my font. I just typed out this font up here.
What looks quite different.
And it looks very different, you'll see. So what I did was copy it down, created it to outlines by clicking, right click, you get a menu option open, and you can create to outlines.
When we create to outlines.
When we create to outlines, that makes it a shape instead of a font. Okay. So now the reason I copied it is because I'm losing my font now. I can't make any changes to this. It's shapes. Okay. So I put everything together the way it looks here, and as you can see, there is no. This was just hand created using the brush tool, the blob brush tool, and in the blob brush tool, you have when you double click on it.
So let's circle the brush tool right here.
Right here.
Okay.
So there is 2 different tools. When you click here.
There we go. Okay. I just want to make sure you're able to see it because she can tend to move very quickly through it.
And I'm sorry about that. It's just what I do.
That's okay.
Okay. So you can actually play with this roundness. Okay. So I can make it really round, or I can make it a calligraphy type round. And I can angle it different ways. Okay. Now, whatever I angle it at, that's the size, that's what it's going to do. So if I angle it like this, it's going to give me a calligraphy mark like that. So what I did here was take this and created the heart shape around the S. First, I placed my text where I wanted it, kind of in a heart shape, kind of creating that.
Moving your text.
Right, to create the shape of the top of the heart. And then I wanted to connect it. So I just kind of drew that over and kind of perfected it. Okay. Just by going in with my selection tool and moving a few dots around here and there. And I added a stroke to all of my design. I think I added a 0.25 stroke. Now some areas I added a 0.5 stroke, but those are just on the thinner letters. Right. And I made it to where you couldn't really tell which were thicker and which were thinner. So
on this, because it's a negative image, we really want that text to stand out. So when it's really important that you add that stroke or you thicken up those lines or use a font that's a little thicker, but here it's a wedding, we want that cursive, we want that elegant writing, that elegant text. So she had to make sure that we had a stroke because it's a negative design and we need that to stand out, especially when I go to clean that bottle to paint it. We're going to see how good your artwork is.
Right.
It's not going to be my fault if it doesn't come through.
That's the final challenge is, you always want to make sure that you're thinking of the next step, the next person who's going to handle it. You want to make sure that whatever you're doing is going to have the final outcome that you want, but they're going to be able to execute it properly the way you envisioned, the way your customer envisioned, and the way you know how, your expertise. Yeah. Everyone has a different set, right? That's right,
and I love the customer service that you have. So that's great. That's wonderful. And let's go over the text here. Okay. We have Jennifer she's from Alabama, and Matthew's from North Carolina. Yes. So we have these 2 different states. I love what you did, met in college, kind of like that middle there. Yeah. Oklahoma.
That's the middle ground right there.
And what day they were engaged.
Yes.
And the day they plan to be married. So just a little bit of history. And we put love always. Yep. Someone said, "Hey, can you put on there, divorced and such?" No, we're selling dreams.
On the love and the celebration.
We're celebrating a wedding. We're celebrating a union, and we're just going to be positive. Okay, yes. We're going to be positive here. So then after this, you have.
That better not have been my husband.
No comment. So we have our image.
Yes. So we have our image, and we just created it, and I put I put the photo above it, and that's taking it to print.
Yep.
And by keeping it in one mask, it just makes it easier for
Makes it easier.
you, the blaster, to
Yeah.
just go through and
I
place it on
did.
the bottle and
I
engrave
did
it.
2 masks originally, but it's very difficult to align that halftone or align the frame around that
Right.
that mask. And changing out the nozzle, I believe, was key just to target that frame area. But I love it. It looks great. If you have questions for April, shoot them over. Can you? Hey, she's so beautiful and so knowledgeable. Can you? You know, I'm proud to say she's my cousin.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're related, in case you didn't know that. All right, so stay there for a moment. I want to make sure that we don't have any questions for you.
Okay.
All right, so we have, let's see here, Jim, thank you for joining us, and Rolland, hello. And let's see here, we have Link Jarvis. Someone put a link for the Jarvis screen in there. Thank you very much for that. And we're going to switch over here to Facebook. Stephanie. Hi, Stephanie. How are you doing? So you love the paints, Montana Gold, Gold Chrome, Silver Chrome. Yes, so with the Montana Gold Series paints, you can get them in the Chrome or Gold matte, the same, Silver matte, Silver Chrome. So those are options for you depending on what your final product is. Linda Reynolds, how are you? Good to see you from Indy. Very nice to hear from you guys. I hope you guys are doing well. All right, so they're great customers. Love all my customers. I miss you guys so much. The reason why we started doing this was because we could not travel to go to shows. So what do? We need to service our customers, and we start doing these live events, which, hey, we're live, and you may see some of my hiccups, some of my mistakes, but we all learn, right? We learn from our mistakes. Okay, so let's take a look at what I have here. And a test here on the paint is you want to touch the outside of the mask. Okay, do you see a fingerprint? I don't. No fingerprint. If you see a fingerprint, the mask, the paint is still wet. So what we're going to do is I'm going to tape the photo and I'm going to paint this gold. So let me grab my tape. You can look at my paint job there. And here's I need scissors. I need my painter's tape, and we're going to cover the cream area, and we're going to paint this gold. Okay, so actually, let me put my cover paper on this. Non-stick side. Okay, I'm going to place my cover paper. Okay, I thank you guys for bearing with me. I know I tend to take a little bit of time here. I feel like I'm in a workshop, and we don't have that kind of time. And we're going to cover. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my tape here, and I'm going to cover this halftone image very carefully. And you know I'm praying this works, right? Okay, so now I'm going to take a new piece of tape, and we're just going to cut the side just so it's nice and sharp. Okay, and what I'm doing is I'm covering the halftone image. Okay, so I'm covering the halftone. All right, so now I can paint this gold. And actually I need to take this down a little bit better. Okay. All right, so now we're going to take this.
So Liz, while you're doing that, I think I have a question.
Okay,
I'll
go ahead.
answer.
Yes.
So Deborah, I noticed that you asked what stroke. Really depends on what you're engraving, but if you're using 5 mil, I would definitely go a little thicker than that. Even as slight as of a change to 0.6 or 0.7 might help. There's also there's a stroke on the black, which I had in the front of, and there's another stroke on the white in the back behind the text. And if you come to my computer, I can show you what I'm talking about. Let me see here. So for instance, on the JCM right here, I have a 0.5 stroke. This particular engraving is done on 3 mil. So we want it, because it's such a cursive font, we wanted to make sure that we kept a lot more of the detail. However, if you wanted to use 5 mil, I would definitely up that to about a 0.6. But you definitely don't want to use a 5 mil on a photo. So I have this stroked, and as you can see, I also have a white background with a fill and a stroke of white, and that's stroked quite a lot, 3.7, because you want that to extend beyond the black so that you have the look of so that you can see the image outside the white background. So hopefully that answers your question. If you have any further ones, you can definitely email me at the art department or call, and I'll help you. I'm glad to help you.
It's good to see you. All right, so as you can tell, I don't know if you're able to see, but I started painting my frame gold. I'm drying it. I did the fingerprint test, and I got a fingerprint. So bear with me just a few more seconds here, and then we're going to clean this up. All right, so let me go ahead and just start to kind of separate this bottle. Separate the plastic off of the bottle. And I think that we're going to kind of clean this up here. We're removing the saran wrap. My label's completely protected here. All right. And that looks, I'm going to kind of use my little picker to kind of, I'm going to grab a razor. Let me pick this part up real quick. Okay. All right, so I'm going to grab a razor. Okay, so we're going to kind of clean this. Once it's really dry, you can use some water. The paint is pretty durable. Once it's dry, you want to make sure that you don't dig the razor into the area. I'm going to peel up this heart here. There we go. Okay, and I'm going to take my cleaner in just a moment. Let me see what I can do here to peel this up. All right. And I know, I'm so sorry we ran out of time. We didn't convert the photo. Let me grab a good razor here just to speed up the process. And I'm going to need some glass cleaner.
Oh, here's the glass cleaner. Do you want a new towel? Towel.
Okay. Make sure you allow for drying time. When you're dealing with photos, when you're dealing with painting, you don't want to rush painting. Okay?
No,
I'm just trying to show you the complete process from start to finish. I'm going to take my towel here. I'm going to put a little bit of glass cleaner.
Do we make a good team, Liz?
I think so. I think so. Here we go. And I just got a little bit of, I used my razor a little too fast on the gold area. But you let that gold area dry. And then you can use the cloth to clean it up with no problem. But you want to make sure.
Looks like Bacha Kaloops has joined us. Thank you for joining us.
Here we go. All right, so there's your finished piece. Again, allow for that drying time, and you can do a timeline of your customers. Again, when we talked about the monument industry with Josh Willis, one of the things that I thought was amazing is he said, one of his customers said, tell me about your loved one that passed. But here, tell us about your client. Tell us about who you're buying the gift for. How can we personalize this? And when it's personalized, people love that. It's a treasured gift. So we thank you. We hope we gave you some good ideas. We hope that April is able to explain the artwork setup. But we love doing this. We love sharing with you. You let us know if you have questions. Oh, I think we got some. We got Jan. Good morning. We have Jim. What size dot did we use? We used a 40 line screen on this image here. It was a 40 line screen. We have. Did you answer Deborah Peel?
What size dots did we use on the photo?
Was a 45, and then
45 line screen.
And what stroke did you use for the font, the thin line?
The thin line font.
What stroke?
There was a 0.25 points on the stroke.
We originally tried it with no stroke, and it was too thin. It didn't even stand out.
Right.
Yes.
I had to fix my artwork. See, we live and learn.
Yeah, so you want to learn. We want to learn from April's mistakes. You want to learn from my mistakes.
Right.
And we thank you for joining us. We just send us your questions. Again, we're all about learn sand carving, and go to YouTube. Do you like our videos? Subscribe to our YouTube channel. So youtube.com/sandcarving. We're on Facebook Live and Rayzist. You go to Rayzist Photomask Inc. and then you'll have access to our Facebook. So again, we're sharing with you. Go to our website. You look at some products that we have there for you. We use 3 mil today, 1/16 nozzle, as well as a 3/32. So, anything?
Great teamwork.
Great teamwork. We'll see you soon. Take care.